I'm here to answer another FAQ, and the question is this: why does PBC employ an aircraft carrier strategy? That's a great question. By the way, aircraft carrier is a metaphor that conveys the ideas that PBC is a warship, not a cruise ship, and the battles aren't primarily happening at our building. In the metaphor, the carrier represents the PBC building. The soldiers are all of you. The battles are the next spiritual steps that you're trying to help your kids, your friends, your classmates, your coworkers, your teammates take. And the carrier staff are the pastors whose job it is to equip you. So why an aircraft carrier strategy? Two answers. Answer one, before I left Portugal and before I interviewed and was a candidate at PBC, God made it abundantly clear to me during my prayer times that wherever He led me next, I was supposed to lead that church to employ an aircraft carrier strategy. That was early 2019. In January 2020, Pastor Joel and I began our ministry here at PBC. And then in March of 2020, COVID hit. Everything was shutting down. I remember it so well. And I knew that I needed wisdom. So I went for a prayer walk and asked God what to do. And as I walked, God brought a clear answer to mind. Tell people we're not closed, we're deployed. So that's what we did. And for a period of time, PBC did no ministry at the building and an amazing amount of ministry away from the carrier. You know, as I reflect back on that time, I see how God had prepared us for COVID, but I also can see that God used COVID to accelerate the adoption of this metaphor, this ministry strategy that we've adopted for at least for this time period. That's answer one. Answer two, given our context and vision, the aircraft carrier strategy makes sense. Let's unpack that, starting with our context. PBC is a regional church, not a community church. We are located in a village, but most of you don't come from this village. In fact, if I've counted correctly, you come from 12 different school districts. If most of us lived or worked here in Panama, we would focus our ministries on Panama, and we would do many of those ministries here at our building. But you are decentralized, so it makes sense that the majority of our ministries occur where the majority of our people are, decentralized all over the county. That's the context. What about our vision? Our vision is to make disciples of Jesus among two specific groups: our own kids and people who are open but unchurched. People who would be open to our message, perhaps, but they're not attending church anywhere. And so to accomplish our vision, we heavily staff these two ministry areas, and then we support them both with focused prayer. So how do we do that? Well, let's take a look at them one at a time. How do we make disciples of our own kids? Well, we do that through ministries at the park, right? Park ministries, kids ministries, 6DU ministries, and also through deployed parents. It makes sense, guys, if you think about it, that we do a lot of this ministry at the building, right? The park ministry, the kids ministry, the 6DU ministry at the building, because both the kids, the folks that we want to make disciples of, and the staff, the people who are going to do the work, are already gathered here, right? We already gather for weekend services. We're here. It makes sense to do that ministry, or at least the majority of that ministry here. What about the other group? How do we make disciples of those who are open but unchurched? Well, we do that through deployment. Deployed people, what I sometimes call lay heroes, people who do something. They go to work, or they join a club, or they are in a sport or whatever on purpose, with intentionality, for the purpose of passing on their faith of God and their knowledge of God to whoever it is they're going to spend time with. It makes sense that we don't do this at the building. The people that we're trying to reach aren't gathering here. They're all over, right? They're at your sports clubs, your school, your whatever. And so we take Jesus to them. So these are the two main ministry areas here at PBC. Nearly 60 volunteers serve in our kids' ministries, and around 60 that I know personally are actively involved in what I call deployment, right? Being part of something on purpose, something that God has either laid on their heart to do or God has given them the assignment to do. It could be parenting, might be an example of that. As you think about all this, this provides a partial answer to another FAQ, which is, Why doesn't PBC have a ministry, right? You fill in the blank. Why doesn't PBC have that? Friends, I believe what Paul Miller wrote. He said this, energized saints will accomplish what 100 programs can't. I believe that. I believe that as you live out your calling, whether it's a ministry assignment that God has given to you or a heart that God has given you, as you do that, you will accomplish things that a program never could. I believe that we will make more disciples as a church if we strongly support lay heroes and inspire and equip them to do what God lays on their heart to do. I believe we'll make more disciples that way. And I believe that if we added more ministries at the church, you guys are great people. And so you'd serve in those ministries. But if we did that, we will tie up the time and energy of our lay heroes and unintentionally pull them away from their deployment. And I don't want to do that because of what I believe God does through you, through deployment. Speaking of deployment, as I thought about that this week, and I thought about the places where you are deployed, where we have people of this church who are living with intentionality, trying to pass on their faith in God and their knowledge of God to others through deployment. Through what you do, everything you do, if you're part of this church, is a ministry of this church. Through you, through deployment, we have multiple ministries to education professionals. We have a counseling ministry. We have a ministry to small engine technicians. We have a ministry to senior citizens. We have at least 2 ministries to healthcare workers. We have a ministry to young moms. We have a ministry to support wives whose husbands are pastors. We have a ministry to inner city students. We have multiple prayer ministries. We have multiple ministries to help people with practical needs, such as giving them rides when they need them, giving them meals when they need them, firewood, that kind of thing. We have an outreach ministry to college students. We have a ministry to people who are suffering debilitating physical conditions. We have multiple ministries to students who don't attend church. We have ministry to lovers of a specific genre of music. We have several sports ministries. We have a ministry to international agricultural workers. Isn't that amazing? We have an outreach to cyclists. And Lord willing, soon we'll have a prison ministry. And whatever God lays on your heart to do. As you hear that list, I hope you are excited by what God does through deployment and what God is doing through the ministries of PBC. And I hope it makes sense why we've adopted, at least for this season, this aircraft carrier model.